question number 1 says, how did you get started in music and how does Clive end up being called Mono? Okay, I entered the music industry professionally in 1988 after I was taught my first chords on a proper standard guitar on the 25th of January 1988. So after being taught those the first 3 chords, I started teaching myself and improving myself. By mid-year 1988, I formed my first group called Sarungano Chanters. So basically, that's how I entered the music industry. And the second part of the question is about the name Mono. I used to have a single dreadlock because dreadlocks are my favorite hairstyle up to now. Right now, ndakura sabvudza tichakwanisa kumera kugodzi. But dreadlocks are my favorite hairstyle. So when I was in school, it was not allowed to have full dreadlocks. I was at Mfakose number 3 high school. So to compensate for the passion, I grew a single dreadlock. That single dreadlock was called a monologue. So that's where the name Mono came from. The first person to give me that name was Admayaka Singer, and another guy called Tondirai, who was a drummer in a band at Kampurizatesi. So that's where the name Mono came from. Then question number 2 says, there's a legend about how you once played in the same band as Admayaka Singer. Yeah, that was in 1989. That was my second band. The band was called Sharks Brothers. What happened is Admayaka Singer was still a security guard that time. He was the lead guitarist playing Sungura. I was the lead guitarist playing reggae and Mbira music. So basically, there were 2 bass players in the same band. I mean, 2 lead guitarists in the same band and no bass player. So end result, we resolved that I play bass for Admire when he does his Sungura, and he plays bass for me when I do my reggae and Mbira music. So that's why up to now, when it comes to bass guitar, I'm more fluent on Sungura than most genres. So that's how we play together in the same band. So in that band, we attempted many auditions and we failed all of them. And the same thing happened on my first band, Sarungano Chantas. That's why we split. So this Chucks Brothers was my second band. And we failed all the auditions. And that's how that's how the band split. Okay, question number 3 talks about the number of albums that I'm featured as over 1,000 recordings. And the question says, is this true and how have you managed this? Okay, since 1992, okay, let me go backwards. 1988 is when I joined the music industry, and we were doing auditions from 1988 until we were finally deemed fit to record in 1992. So from 1992, I've been recording with a lot of artists as a band member as well as a session musician. So it's because of my time as a session musician that the number of my recordings have gone up like that. And the biggest number of my recordings was between 1994 and I think somewhere around 2003. This is because 1994 I converted to Christianity. And when I became a Christian that time, there were very few lead guitarists in gospel music in Zimbabwe. So I think there were 2 guitarists. I think there were about 3 guitarists that time. That was me in Harare and Pax Matenga, who used to play for Pastor Aisa. He's late now. He was based in Mutare, but he would switch between Mutare and Harare. So basically, it was me and Pax. And I remember Brian Sibalo used to play with a guitarist called Ray what? Mashaba. I'm forgetting the surname. So, but Ray was not a gospel artist. He was a jazz guitarist. So you'll just feature on Brian Sibalo's music. So I was a Christian and I used to work for Zion Church as a full-time musician and I worked as a full-time musician for 4 years, switching between different churches. So basically, that time I recorded a lot of albums because there were no guitarists in the gospel music circles. So I remember I played for Celebration Choir, my Ndere Brothers, Fungisai, Zvakavapano, Ejia Gospel Trainer, Vikombo, Kerom Jokoro. It was a lot of work. Pax Afro and so forth. So that's why my numbers went up of the projects that I participated in. Then I also started my own studio 2007. So when you run your own studio these days, the way studios are run is 99% of the time the producer is to participate on the recordings. So that's why the number of my recordings shot up like that. And the good thing with me is I write things down. So usually I always get my dates right and I always get my data correct. Okay, question number 4 says you have managed to switch genres successfully. How did you manage this? Okay, like I mentioned, that I've been a session musician all my life, and as a session musician, you are forced to study and understand the principles of different genres, because every genre of music has got its own principles and its own rules and its own chord progression, its own melodies, and so forth. So since I worked as a session musician, I had to study a lot of different genres that are played in Zimbabwe or that have a fan base in Zimbabwe or that genres that are recorded by bands in Zimbabwe. So because of that, having I ended up being well versed with the different types of music, so I can easily switch from rock music to jazz, to mbira music, to sungura music, to rumba. It's because of my background as a session musician. So besides that, I also listen to different types of music just for fun. So because of that, I always end up very curious about how different genres of music are played. So basically, I think that's how I managed to switch between genres. Okay, question number 5 is about music production. Okay, so what started was me working as a session musician. And working as a session musician, I was mostly working as a studio musician. So most of my time, I would spend all of my time in the studios, in different studios. So as a result, I ended up understanding what happens in the studio, and I was also getting to be hired to arrange people's music, to coach them how to straighten up their music, how to polish their music. So I was not aware that I was already a producer then. Then one time in 2001, I was in the studio with Elias Msako. I was producing a band. I had just gone to visit him. And then I solved a certain problem. And Clinton Birim was the engineer. Elias Msako was the producer. That's when Clinton Birim said to Elias Msako, you know what, I think it would be better for you to have Mono as the producer and you just become the executive producer, since Mono is more musical and he plays instruments and he understands music better. So from that time, I was hired as a producer for Ngawangwe Records. But we had a small understanding because I was not being given my acknowledgement as the producer. So as a result, I quit, and then I promised myself to come back into music production with my own equipment. I had noticed that the technology was moving from analog to digital because I always read a lot and I love researching. So I knew that I would be able to do it in the near future. So 2003, I joined Oliver Mtukudzi, and we used to travel a lot around the world, and the pay was good enough for me to be able to buy my own studio equipment. So I started buying my own studio equipment from 2004. up to 2006. That's when, but then I opened my studio to the public in 2007. That's how I entered into music production. Okay, question number 6, it's about how I was recording music during the lockdown period. For that one, I thank God for technology, because most of the work that I was doing during the lockdown period was work I was doing with artists in the diaspora and artists in foreign countries as far as Nigeria. I'm still working with the artist I was working with in Nigeria. He's called Musafa King. He's a reggae artist. And I also produced Bongo Riot from South Africa. He's also a reggae artist, and he won a Summer for Best Reggae Album last year. I know the media did not I feel the media did not celebrate it enough, because it was a huge thing. I think it was a huge thing for me and for the country as well. But anyway, that's a story for another day. But basically, answering the question, I was working more online during the lockdown period. Okay, question number 7 is related to question number 6. It's about the reggae artist Bongo Riot that I produced in South Africa won a summer award. What happened is the manager of the artist is called Don Power. He saw my video clips online on YouTube and on Facebook, where I was demonstrating how I create some, or I was giving tutorials on how I create or how I produce music. So he loved how I produced some reggae tracks that I posted on my social media platforms. Because of all the types of music that I play, one genre of music that I really understand very much is reggae music. Because reggae music is not much about the skills, it's much about the feel. And I understand the feel better than a number of genres that I play. So every time I do a reggae track, people who understand reggae always say the feel is correct. So when he saw the video clips, he called me and said, "You know what? I've got an artist who does reggae, but a number of producers here in South Africa are failing to get the feel correct." So he asked me to do one song first, and we did a song called Rest in Peace. You can search it up on YouTube. It's RIP by Bongo Riot. And after that song, he asked me to do some more. So I carried on with the other songs. And when the album was released, it won a Summer Award. But we've never met with the guy. This is the same thing that I do with a group called Cambo Boys from UK. We've never met as well, because we always work online. So I always work online with a number of artists. So that's how I worked on that album by Bongo Riot. Okay, question number 8 is about how I wrote the book Poor and Famous and my other 2 books. Writing has been one of my passions ever since I was in primary school. I remember when I was in grade 6, was it grade 6? Grade 5, grade 6, I had my own storybook. I had a book that I would write short stories. And I don't know how I lost it, but I had written a number of short stories that I think they were very interesting. So I was always fond of writing. And even after I finished my O-levels, I wanted to pursue academia. My plan was to do music and academia at the same time. What had happened is 2 years before I entered the music industry, I think 2 or 3 years, I started researching a lot about the music industry, the international music industry and the local music industry. And I noticed that number one, entering the music industry was difficult worldwide. But when it comes to successes in Zimbabwe, being a successful musician who is financially stable, I found it to be very difficult according to the research that I did. And after that, I also started speaking to a number of people that I knew who were in big bands and friends who had relatives that they were in big bands. And I noticed that surviving on music alone is very tricky in Zimbabwe. So I decided to carry on with my schooling, and after school, proceed with my education and play music at the same time. But my father was very much against it. He said, it's either you do music or you do academics. And I said, I want to do both. And he said, no, you can't do both. So we had a huge fight, and end result is he said, I'm just giving you one option. If you are going to do music, I'm not going to fund your education. And if you are going to do the education, you are not going to do music. So I said, you know what, I would rather do music. So I refused to carry on with academia. And so I entered the music industry knowing fully well that it doesn't pay much because I'd done my research, but I was willing to take the risk. So when the struggles started coming, the financial struggles and so forth, I was not shocked because I knew everything. So basically, answering the question, after I got into the music industry, years later, I just decided, you know what, let me write some articles replying questions that people were asking me on Facebook. So I started writing articles, long articles. People would ask me my questions about the music industry, and I would reply them on Facebook. And I remember a journalist by the name of Blessing Vava is the first one who approached me and he said, you know what, from the way you are writing, I can tell that you're a writer. Why don't you write books? So that's when I started writing books. And the first book that I wrote is called Following the Melody, which I released 2017. It's biographical. I'll be telling the story of how I made mistakes in the music industry and how those mistakes can be avoided. And then I released Poor and Famous, a book that I explain how the music industry operates in Zimbabwe, why we get famous musicians who are not rich in Zimbabwe. Then the third book that I wrote is called Men Vacuum. It's a book that I wrote to celebrate my 50th birthday last year. And it's a book about the boy child, challenges faced by the boy child. I know these days everybody's talking about the girl child. So it now seems as if the boy child has got no problems. So I was focusing on that. Okay, question number 9, it talks about the music business. And the question says, you have strong views on music as a business in Zimbabwe. How do you feel about taking music as a business? Okay, yeah, I've always had the mind that musicians take music in Zimbabwe as a hobby and expect it to pay them as a profession, as a business. So my thinking has always been that if you want to take music as a business that pays you as a business, you also need to treat your profession as a business. So that's my opinion, and every time I'm invited to speak, I always make sure that I mention it. The music is like a game of chess. You need to strategize. It's not just about the talent alone. Because if you have talent and you lack strategy, you won't go anywhere. And you become bitter and angry because you'll be poor and famous. So basically, that's the answer to that question. Okay, question number 10 is about the recognition of instrument players in Zimbabwe. Yeah, that one is a huge problem. Because every time people talk about the music industry, I've noticed that a bigger percentage of the time they are just talking about the lead vocalists or those people holding the microphones or the band leaders. And everybody forgets about everybody behind the vocalist. As a result, behind most lead vocalists in Zimbabwe, there's a band that is not happy. And most band leaders in Zimbabwe are known to be very bad paymasters. They are known to be very stingy. And it's very surprising that you find somebody driving expensive cars, having a number of houses, whilst these band members cannot even afford a bicycle. It's a very common issue in Zimbabwe. You can have a situation where the band is paid, for example, around 5,000. The band leader can take something like 4,500 on his own, and then he pays the band $500. Then you have to split amongst yourselves. So that's the situation in Zimbabwe. I don't know how that one can be addressed because it's an it's an issue which is very tricky because band are closed up businesses. You don't know what happens behind closed doors. Vanhu kana vavega manhingiriro saka zvinonetsa kugadzirisa, but the bottom line is it's a serious issue in Zimbabwe. Band members are very neglected, very underpaid, and most of them aren't Tambanam. Yeah, question number 11, it's about how I'm invited to speak at different platforms. And the question goes on further to say, do you think this could lead to a better policy position for artists since you are now getting an opportunity to speak directly about the issues that affect your business? Yes, what happened with me counting pazvakatangira pacho ndepekuti I would usually speak at my artists album launches. Maartists angu paailonche maalbum launches I would speak ipapapo. Saka pandaingotaura ipapo I never thought kuti zvichazosvika level kuti vanhu vanonga kuinvite kumaseminars and so forth. Ndaingotaurawo zvaizvo ndingosapotawo artists wangu arelease album, ndingomupawo maadvice matips chichi. But after doing that for a few functions, I started receiving my invitations. Ndatoriceive a number of my invitations ekunzi nditoita MC, but those ones I turned them down akawanda acho because I was not very much interested nongoita MC pamafunctions. But ekuita speak at mafunctions ndo akabva awanda. Saka I like them a lot because I'll be addressing my day-to-day issues. Because one problem that's happening these days is because hatisina marecord labels. So since tisina marecord labels ndo aisimbopa guidance kuma-artists one. Because marecord labels, how they used to operate is vai scouter for talent, vakurecorda for free, vozotora mari yavo from ourselves. So in order for them to get mari dzavo, they'd make sure that you sell. So for you to sell, you have to do the right music and use the right strategies. So ipapo mai ndo paakuleka mai, because I'm sure if you notice kuti since digitalization, I think we've only managed to produce one international act in Zimbabwe, Mokomba. Vamwe vese chingonoridzira vanhu vari ku-UK, vanhu vari ku-Australia, vanhu vari ku-Dallas, at times vachinoridzira mutuma-classroom. But kuti tinatsoitawo maartists anonoridza mahuge festivals vachiridza nzvimbo dzakaita sana Switzerland kusina kana mazimba, kunana France kusina mazimba, maproper international platforms since 2000 hatina. It's because manje vanhu havasina kumusic, hakusina that guidance yaisimbopiwa nemarecord labels. Because marecord labels chaita kuti vanzwisise nyaya iyoyo ndeyekuti airanwa nevachena. And we all know kuti vachena they are very good at checking statistics kuti zviri kutengesa ndezvipi. So they would move around vachinocheka mumarecord label bars and so forth kuti zviri kutengesa ndezvipi. Saka vanenge vaine data chairo. So their knowledge was informed nedata, empirical data. But manje after the fall of marecord labels, manje tega taakunyeperana manje. That's why unoona kuti everybody wants to copy manaija, vada kukopa manigerians, ma-South Africans, ma-Jamaicans and so forth, thinking kuti ndo chavaitisa international. But zvinhu zvanhu zvatoprova kudhara kuti it doesn't work. So every time pandinopiwa platform to speak, nechida kutry kungobatsira vanhu, try to take the role of the record labels kuratidza vanhu kuti no, muZimbabwe zvinoshanda ndeizvi, zvisingashanda ndeizvi. Because what happens with music is every country ine masystems ayo. Ine masystems ayo kupolitics, ine masystems ayo kubhora, ine masystems ayo kumusic. So as far as Zimbabwe is concerned, foreign music has never worked in Zimbabwe. Inokupa airplay, worira paradio, but haufoka kwira ndega kuenda kunze. And muno macho music yacho havatengi futi. And what happens with the Zimbabweans is vakafarira music yekunze, for example, vakafarira rumba. Rumba yakambonetsa muno muZimbabwe, but vese vemuZimbabwe vakaridza rumba hapana akaita mari. Vanapita Tangwena nevamwe vese Marakashi Band, John Ali and the Marakashi Band, vanakwasa Kings, hapana akaita mari. Vanhu vemuZimbabwe vanopromoti kana vakada reggae, vanonyoda reggae kuJamaica. Vakada rumba, vanoda rumba iri kubva kuDRC kwacho chaiko. Vakada mapiano, vada mapiano iri kubva kuSouth Africa kwacho. Vakada yekuNigeria vanotoda dzana Davido exactly. Iwo ukadzita muno kunoridzwa zvako paredhiyo and there, but pamari chepa hawiti. Kushoka kwako chakwa vanhu havauyi. Saka izvo zvinonetsa kutsanangurira zvazvo vanhu, because muZimbabweans tine problem yekuti usually we prefer stories dzinosounda good than kuudzwa story neevidence. because at times you understand it, because at times manyepa anotapira kupfuura chokwadi on. So usually I don't care whether chokwadi chandotaura chichivava, and I don't care whether people feel okay about the truth. Chane basa racho ndicho ndingotaura chokwadi, then kana munhu achigamuchirawo ndizvozvo, but at least ndabudisa mafacts angu. And number two, yes, I'm sure kuti pane machanges achaitika. Inonzwa kuti kana paine dambudziko mukaramba mungofaita munopedzisira mazonzwika. Yes, my son Taka is also now into music. He has always been musical. There's a video that I posted on YouTube, which was shot by ZTV year 2001. Taka was still 98, 99, 2000. I think he was still 3 years old. And my late mother was asked kuti pavana vamona ava ndeupo wamuri kufunga achiita music. Zvanzi mukomana uyu ndivanoona kuti achiita music. Kanga chiri kadiki but my mother could tell kuti this one ndewe music. Saka he's always shown interest kubvira kari kadiki. So paakati kurei manje akabva aenda paPrince Edward School. Some first days he used to think kuti gitari rakaoma kuridza, saka aida madrums. But pamadrums pacho he was not improving. So the mother ndowakataura kuti, you know what, I don't think mwana is a drummer, I think he's a guitarist, because pamadrums is not improving. Kuchikora angoramba ingoridzwa percussion instead of madrums. Saka bvamufosera mai kuti move to guitar. So aiti kana abva kuchikora unzi wambopractice, kana usina practice unzi unonotimba mugarden, kana usina practice. Kana usingadi kutimba mugarden, practice a guitar. So after a few weeks of manikidzwa akabva atanga kuona aizvi guitar racho rinenge ritori easy kwaari, paatanga kutonakidzwa negitari. Then by 2014 anga kutogona kutoridza, and then I started taking him kuma-radio stations nekuma-TV stations ndichimadvertiser. He did a number of TV shows, a number of radio shows. Within a short time we started getting calls from artists vachimuda. But ndazongomuti, no, you know what, you are still very young, so I think it's better for you to play with people who are young. So the first band rakatanga kuridza naro was Gary Tight. So that was 2014 one. Achitopopota kuti uri kuregeza mwana achitopinda mubhawa, achaona pfambi mama azovhiringika musoro bla bla, ndikati mayas magitara kubasa, ende kubasa ikoko kune pfambi, saka ndaadzioni, so that anobva dzungu rese inobva rapera. Endozvisho haanambobvira atipa any story up to now. Hatina kana story yatakambonzwa kunzi mwana wenyu akazoita zvakati zvakati. But that's how he entered the music industry, and I'm very happy with the progress yaaita so far. Yeah, question number 13 is talking about social media. I've always liked the idea of family technology. Like I told you, even kuna 2001-2 pandakatanga kutenga equipment, ndava ndatotanga kutotenga zvinhu zviri digital kudhara, because ndandatoona ndokuri kuenda technology. So I'm old, zvangu I'm 51, but ndoda kufambira netechnology. Handidi kuramba ndiri kuna 1970 when everybody else kuna 2021. So with the coming in of social media, ndabva ndanatsopinda full force, and I'm very, very active on social media. I'm very active on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. Plus I'm very active, but the most active ningrini yangu is I think WhatsApp and Facebook, those the most active, followed by Instagram in the 5,000 my followers. Then Twitter and YouTube is really slow zvazo, but ndongozviengage still, but paninatsofire sterek paFacebook neWhatsApp. So I really engage with fans, I engage with friends and so forth, and I'm somebody who responds very well. I think I reply every single message that I get. So I take it like it's a very serious tool yatakatovhurwa dhona Mwari, because right now with Facebook, in fact with social media in general, unenge watone newspaper rako. Saka you can correct my statements mamwe anenge ataurwa nevanhu about you. You can advertise your stuff ipapapo. So that's what I do. I advertise my music ipapo, I advertise my shows emwana wangu ipapo. I also post my speech and invite kwa, like you mentioned earlier, these days I get a lot of invitations to speak at my album launches and so forth. So every time I go to speak, I make sure that I'm recorded so that I post it on social media. And basically, the music industry has a lot to do with visibility. You need to be seen, kuturiko. It's not a good thing for for music fans to ask kuti naimi ningachiri mupenyu here. So I make sure that I take advantage of every opportunity. That's why I don't turn down my interviews, epa radio, epa TV. I don't turn down when I'm asked to go and speak because it gives me visibility, and the visibility it feeds back to pushing my name forward. So that's how I take advantage of social media. The future for Mukundu is bright, although it's difficult also in Zimbabwe to not so plan because you know Zimbabwe is very unpredictable. But I'm doing my best to make sure the future is brighter. Right now, November, end of November, I was supposed to have graduated degree rangu ndukuita degree in music business, musicology and technology with MSU. But ninya COVID manje, instead of graduating in November, I will graduate next year. But still, after I graduate, I'm not doing the degree. I'm doing the degree to equip myself, and those are my plans are brain mango, so which I'm not going to reveal yet. But my plans are to advance education. I love learning, and the degree and it's a very good degree. And for a brain, so I think I'll be writing more books. I'll be doing more videos, more educational videos, and I'll be doing a lot. So at the moment, I can just say the future is bright. And thank you very much for having me on this program. What happened is ZBC Kwankwa Kushanda Nonzi Tende Madondo. It's another lady who was very progressive and hardworking. So Saka akaitisa a number of my very positive changes with ZBC. Saka akazonda approach akati toda kubvisa ngoma iye I think yagarisa for too long. Saka toda a new soundtrack for my news bulletin yedu. So ndangoti alright, ingonipa ngoma dzacho idzodzo ndoona kuti can I do something nadzo. Saka ndabva ndadzitora ndaita a number of my experiments, and ndabudisa about 2 or 3 maningrini. Saka ese bangopasa, that's how I worked on them. Saka right now vakazo assigna new management yakazoassigna vamwe futi to do other soundtracks, but right now yangu soundtrack yandakaita ndo ichiri kushandiswa pa lunchtime news. But that year pandakatanga kuita pacho soundtrack aishandiswa ese from Radio Zimbabwe, National FM, Power FM, SFM, ese ndina ndakagadzira, but pakazochinjawo management, pakazoita a number of my changes. So right now yangu soundtrack ndo iri kushandiswa pa lunchtime news.